Iran is in the news a lot lately, and there's been discussions of threats to Iranian civilization. There's been threats to Iran's cultural heritage in Iran, as well as existential threats to the region. But what is Persian culture? What is the legacy of Iran? Persian, which is the language spoken in Iran, is actually sort of equivalent to French or Latin in Europe, where it was used for literature and diplomacy across a huge region. So it's not just limited to the modern state of Iran, it's used in Central Asia, it's used in the Indian subcontinent. This brings with it a literary culture and an artistic culture that we see throughout Western Asia and South Asia, as well as in Iran and the Persian Gulf. Here at Trinity College, we have a great collection of Persian language manuscripts that come from India and Iran. These give us a window into this Persianate high culture of literature and poetry and diplomacy, but they also serve as a reminder of Western interactions and interventions in the region dating back centuries. We have some examples from one of the royal libraries of Iran, Shiraz, that come into Trinity through William Daig de la Touche, who is a prominent Irish figure who is part of the diplomatic process in the Persian Gulf. This is during a period in the 18th century when the East India Company is controlling much of the Indian subcontinent, but they're also very concerned about their interests in the wider region and the flow of goods and people, especially through the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf. So they also have outposts in places like Basra, now in Iraq, or in Bushehr, where these manuscripts enter the Daig de la Touche collection. We have his inscriptions in the opening of these manuscripts of his beautiful 18th century handwriting, noting where he acquired them. But we also have inscriptions from one of the slightly earlier owners, Edward Galley, who has written his name and then also his stamp in Persian. And so we also see evidence of the way that these East India Company figures are taking part in this diplomatic process of meeting with perhaps other high-level diplomats in Iran, acquiring materials from the Royal Library, maybe as part of a diplomatic exchange, possibly on the open market. Not all of these manuscripts are being valued by the time that they are acquired. But also with seals like this says Edward Galley in Persian, ways that they're sort of styling themselves as these literate Persian gentlemen. This is the way that a Persian bibliophile would mark manuscripts in their possession. We can look at the quality of the brushwork. It's done with brushes that are only a few hairs and very fine, sort of opaque watercolors that are layered brushstroke by brushstroke and built up to create these incredibly fine color gradients, these very precise lines that fill this quite bustling composition. We can see the way that these figures are balanced against one another. Everywhere we look on the page, there's some detail that we can focus on and find enjoyment in. What are people holding? What are people wearing? How are they engaging with one another? And this sort of level of workmanship and activity we see on the page is one of the reasons that we can talk about the quality of a manuscript like this as well. We have to keep in mind that this Persian literary culture wasn't confined just to Iran, but that Persian literature was found throughout Western and South Asia. We have some examples here from the Indian subcontinent that also show us another pathway by which materials enter the Trinity collections, and indeed many Western collections. But it has a note in the back, we see here in English, from an Irish figure in the East India Company, Boyce, stating that the book was taken, that is to say, looted, from a house in the Chandni Chowk during the 1857 rebellion against the British presence in India. And based on what we know about this manuscript, it's by a poet who was attached to an earlier generation of the Mughal court, that this is possibly in the poet's own hand, an autographed copy. And based on what we know about the layout of Old Delhi, it was also possibly in the possession of his family until 1857, that this could have been something that was taken from the house of his descendants. We in the West need to remember and need to broaden our thinking that Iran is not just a country, but a civilization that has had massive artistic, literary, and cultural impact throughout world history.